The Total War Warhammer series, to me personally, has been a raging success, with almost 3,000 hours divided between the both games. And we know that this series is far from done. It has been confirmed that there's still a few Lord packs left for Game 2, and after that, we have the third game of the trilogy. And it's due to the fact that eventually Game 2 will come to a close, and Game 3 will probably be with us around 2020, that I've decided to start looking towards speculation on what the pre-order race will be for the third game. So after a little bit of theory crafting, and obviously looking through the forums and so on to see other people's ideas, here are my top picks for the pre-order incentive race pack for Total War Warhammer 3. What you'll notice on the screen right now is the Mortal Empires campaign map. I honestly believe that the pre-order race will be featured in the Mortal Empires campaign. This is purely because the pre-order race, Norska, was featured in the Grand Campaign for the first game, and didn't become available until the Mortal Empires campaign came out. Well, a little bit after, if I can actually remember correctly, which, yeah, that was a bit of a hassle and so on, but we won't dwell on that. So we know that the mega campaign that will eventually come out on the third game will feature areas between Warhammer 1, Warhammer 2 and Warhammer 3, leading to something larger than the Mortal Empires campaign. So I'm going to focus more on the races in the Eye of the Vortex campaign and then move on from there. First would be Araby. Yes, it is another human race, but it's got its own distinct style, architecture, lore, laws of magic, and so on. Yes, it didn't really have an official army book, but as we've seen with Norska, which didn't have its own army book, it was actually pretty much an extension of Chaos. They had their own things created by Creative Assembly. Araby has its own land, it's got its own structure, it's got its own culture, and we know of famous Regiment of Renown units, which can obviously be implemented. As for legendary lords, I think most of them are dead in the current lore where the universe is at the moment, but we know of Creative Assembly to kind of just bend that a little bit, so it's perfectly fine if Sultan Jafar just randomly appears, like, I think 1,000 years later. Having Araby introduced into the southern parts of the map would present for an interesting opportunity. It's quite barren there at the moment. The most you see is Creek Head Taker and the Tomb Kings, actually. Tic-Tac-Toe was indeed added down there, and Krokar's also around that area, just a bit far off, but it does help to have a different race to kind of spruce up the monotony. They'd play a little different to, say for example, the Empire, using more fast cav and skirmisher units. Yeah, it would be a very bit similar to Bretonnian in cavalry sense, but they'd have monstrous units such as elephant riders, a lot of heavy magic such as djinns, they'd have flying carpets and so on, so aesthetically they would look very, very different, and they would have their own sense of purpose. I for one quite enjoy the Tomb King campaigns. I play them quite often, especially Archon or Cetra, and it gets kind of boring having to fight the same things quite early on until you unify Nahakara. Having the Warriors of Araby would be a perfect fit to actually just spruce everything up. Next would be the Southern Realms. Now, they're not really represented in the Eye of the Vortex, but they do have some representation in a certain area, that of the New Age colonies. So, yeah, we wouldn't be getting a lot of units in terms of anything, because let's face it, the Southern Realms are Talia, Stalia, and the Border Princes, but they've sent men forward. We know lore-wise they've got people there. It makes a lot of sense, especially for an early ally for Mazda Mundi. This would be a race where they'd only probably get one legendary lord, and then maybe just get more coming out in the Mortal Empires campaign, but it would be more focused towards those of the Eye of the Vortex, so just the baseline game 2. The only problem about this is it would be technically 3 races in one pack, because they don't really have their own units, which is a bit of a shame. Obviously they can make them into 3 different things, but I doubt we'll get 3 races in one pack, and it will just be a universal mercenaries, dogs of war type of faction. I kind of see it really interesting there, where we get one guy in the Eye of the Vortex campaign, where next to Mazda Mundi obviously, and another one maybe as a functioning horde faction, very similar to how the Vampirates kind of work at the moment. Naturally, in the Mortal Empires, they'd get a bit more, but I doubt maybe we'd get 5 legendary lords. I don't know. Like, Norska only had 2, and it can be a little bit finicky there, but we do know of Creative Assembly being incredibly nice when it comes to content patches, so hey, it's a possibility. Because at the very least, we'd need 1 legendary lord there in Lustria, one in Talia, one in Estalia, and one at the Border Princes, with maybe a fifth being a kind of horde faction. Moving on to my third pick, which might be the most unlikely, yet still a possibility. That being Albion. The island of Albion is featured not only in the Mortal Empires, but also in the Eye of the Vortex, and kinda was there for the first game too in the Grand Campaign. This is a race which had a lot of fleshed out lore. It was kinda there, but not so much there. There was a campaign book that was created, Shadows of Albion I believe it was called, which did go into the lore of Albion, some special units like the Truthsayers, the Darksayers and so on. We know that there's aquatic orcs there. It might be cool, but that would have to be like a one legendary lord race, unless they kind of flesh it out and put someone else somewhere in like the other side of the map or something like that. Honestly, I understand the fascination with Albion, and it would be really cool because if it's the case that Game 3 is focusing more on the north, like far beyond Norska and stuff like that, it's more than likely that Kislev will be there, and so will Albion, given the geography of it. Obviously, as we've discussed before, Creative Assembly have been given some creative leeway, so they can actually create races out of nothing, which would make sense for something like Albion, because it is a very well-known place in lore. But being perfectly honest, I don't think they'll add in Albion just yet, and it'll probably be a Game 3 DLC if anything. Honestly, with minor races such as the Amazons and so on, I think we can just forget about them. They're very, very unknown in the lore. They have very, very little to them, barring like, I think like 1st to 4th edition or something, so I don't think we'll ever see them. Hey, there's modders out there, we can get something similar. But with that, we're going to have to move on to the Mortal Empires campaign map, seeing as there's not really that many races left to cover, and we've already gone over some popular ones. Here we're going to have to look at it in a bit more neutral sense, and just go over some other things first. Firstly, Halflings, they're not going to get their own race pack, we're aware of this. There'll probably be a DLC in the future for the Empire for that, but they're not going to make a race pack for literally one area, because it's just the moot, isn't it? Now, some players don't know this, but you can actually pan to the far right of the map, going over to an untextured area, which is usually covered by Fog of War. That is a part of a land that belongs to Chaos Dwarves and usually Hobgoblins. However, I don't think that the Chaos Dwarves will be a pre-order incentive. Them being a Forge World race with their own official army book and so on, I think they'll actually be one of the core 4. Hey, they could throw a fast one on us and just give us Mortar Gods, which, hey, could happen, but no. I would prefer Undivided and then going into Paths and so on. That's just me, at least. Honestly, the only race I see being able to be a pre-order incentive would be Kislev. They have their own lore, they have their own aesthetics, we know they have their own laws of magic, they've obviously got very well-known legendary lords. The units, yes, they're human, but they've got their own thing going for them. Winged Hussars, we know they're quite brutal in combat, they're used to fighting in the cold, they've got their own architecture. The only thing that puts me against this is the fact that you would require both Game 1 and Game 2 to be able to play as Kislev, which CA might do to kind of incentivize people to buy both, but we're not really aware how many people actually own both. Hey, as far as we know, people could literally have both, everyone could literally have both. But I find it hard to believe. I believe some people have waited for their favorite races to come out and they've probably just bought the game with that. It just really depends. Honestly, I doubt it would be a pre-order incentive for that. It would be tough, and I bet you a lot of people will get mad because essentially you're going to have to own all 3 to be able to play as Kislev, and that honestly just seems like dirty sales tactics. Let's just face it, the forums would all blow up if you needed to have all 3 games just to play one race. It would be insane. But these are simply my opinions, and I could be more than wrong. They could even come up with a race that nobody really expected. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. And with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.